When is Aptos going to pop? When is it going to take a nice ride upwards? We're going to talk about that right now. I'm going to start by looking at the daily chart and we'll look at the technical layout of APT. Now, I am going to be 100% honest. I make videos on several crypto coins, about 6 to 8 regularly. Aptos, this is my first video to make on Aptos. I was looking for some coins out there on YouTube that people don't make a lot of videos on, and Aptos is one that I ran across. So what I am looking at is kind of new, and so we'll enjoy this discovery together. I have an interest in Aptos. Here's why. If I go to coin market cap, right, Aptos is about number 31, so it's by market cap the 31st largest crypto. VET I have an extreme interest in and hold quite a bit of VET, at least for me, maybe not for you, but for me it's a large portion of my portfolio. It's around number 32, and was watching VET do this the other day, increased 40 to 50% in just a matter of about 3 days. It did that once it broke this critical area here. And so my point being is that VET has about the same market cap as Aptos. And it seems like Aptos might be a coin that would be setting up for a nice push upward here literally any time. So I wanted to talk about that, and let's see what kind of trouble we get into. All right, so I'm going to zoom out here. I can look at the all-time movement by Aptos that came out back in October of 2022, came out late. It reached a high of around 20, and it's obviously fallen like many coins have over these past year and a half. But one thing I did notice as I've watched these other coins is Aptos kind of behaved similarly. Aptos was hitting a bottom down here. APT was hitting a bottom down here of about 5. It did what many of the other coins did. It had a nice run up in October, settled for a minute in November, and then had a nice run up in December, which is what APT did. It hit its high, looks like about the 4th of January. It struggled during January, like most altcoins did, as Bitcoin was falling, and it also had its low on the 23rd of January, which is when Bitcoin started taking off. So my point is, APT has been acting much like the other altcoins have, and so it seems reasonable to expect Aptos to continue to move like some of the other altcoins are moving. Let's talk about that. We have been decidedly in this range right here from roughly 8 to 11, okay? And if I zoom out on that, you can see these have been relatively important levels of interest in the market. Even back here in May of 23, you can see there were a bunch of lows here around 8, a bunch of lows. The market got bought up. It finally broke through, and then this support turned into resistance. The market started tagging it, got rejected, tag, reject, tag, reject, tag, reject, right? So my point is this level of 8 is a level that the market reacts around for APT. And you can see it has continuously done that even here in January. The same for this level here. That's why it is also an important level for APT, right around 11. This isn't as crystal clear as the other one, but it's an art. It's not a science. You're never going to get the rejection and the support and resistance lines to the penny. Well, I shouldn't say never, but often you won't, because that's not the way the market behaves. But you can see here was the low, a little bit below this line, back up, down, back up, down, back up, down, back up, several days, broke through, went back up and challenged it. Again, this support with price above it became resistance once price got below it, and it is serving as resistance now here. Okay, it did in December and it did in January, and it really has here in February for a bit. So that's what I'm seeing right off by looking at APT. We are in a range. Not a problem. We can break that range, but it's always interesting looking at the support and resistance lines. We don't make these lines up. You don't need trigonometry and algebra to figure it out. You just need to look at a chart for about 10 to 20 seconds. And when you see a line or see the market behaving similarly around a level, put a line there. And if you have to search more than 30 seconds for a line, there is no line to be found. Zooming out here on the daily, you can also see we're kind of in this wedge that's being formed by this higher lows and higher highs from the bottom, or higher lows from the bottom and lower highs from the top. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's kind of forcing the price is being forced into this wedge, which generally depicts some kind of breakout coming soon. And of course, if I had to guess in this particular market that we're in crypto, if we see a breakout, we are going to see a breakout up. And that's what we would all hope. So technically, that's what I'm seeing with Aptos being in the really the top 30 of crypto. Well, I forget what I was going to say, but my point is, what I was going to say is long term, I don't worry about it, right? So even if Bitcoin, and we'll talk about Bitcoin here in a second, even if Bitcoin does something like this and has a hard time getting over this 52,000 level, which is where we're wrestling right now, and it may not, it may continue to go on up, very well could. But even if we get a little bit of a pullback back down here to 45,000 or so, if that happens, then Aptos might not break this range immediately, right? But it might do something like that and then eventually get up and go. Okay, so I don't think it's a matter of if Aptos is going to break this range and move higher. It just is a matter of when. Speaking of that, let's talk about Bitcoin for a minute. Okay, I've already mentioned this 52,000 level that we're wrestling with here. This is the halving coming up. It's last I saw was currently estimated to happen on April 20th, and that's what this time rectangle represents. So we're here in February, and this marks April 15th through the 20th, and we'll just have to see how Bitcoin is going to react. Historically, before halvings, we have had a 20 to 30% pullback in Bitcoin, which would actually be a 20% pullback, would actually pull us down here to 40 to 45,000. Then we range for a bit and then take off. I don't know if we're going to have that this time. Again, historically, we have had this price fall, but right now we've never had money coming in when these ETFs were approved back in January right here. This is when the ETFs were approved. And now we're getting $300, $400, and $500 million of money coming into these Bitcoin ETFs. It's just a matter of supply and demand. And did you know, here's an interesting fact. 80% of available Bitcoin has not been traded in the last 6 months. Think of that. That means of all the supply of Bitcoin that's out there, there's only 20% out there. 80% is being held. They're not selling. And why would they, right? Of course you're not going to sell now. So in the past 6 months, 80% of Bitcoin has not moved. Yet we've got hundreds of millions of dollars flowing in through these ETFs that were approved. That money has to go somewhere. It's an increased demand against a limited supply, and that is why we have seen this happen. I do follow a lot of people on Twitter, change of subject, but we're going to talk about altcoins here for a second. I do follow a lot of people on Twitter just to understand what they're thinking. This is not a full-time job for me. I have a full-time job myself. I have a family I'm raising, hobbies, many other things just like you do. So we're all busy. So I lean on experts that I find to figure out what's going to happen in the crypto market. I follow this lady right here, Lady of Crypto, and she says, the crypto bull run lasts 10 to 12 months from the break of Bitcoin's previous all-time high, which is 69 to 70,000. This has been consistent for the last few cycles. Why does this matter? Well, she tells us. Now you know that when Bitcoin breaks 69,000, you've got a 10-month countdown timer, and it starts. And by the end of that countdown, you should be all out. If you don't take profit, it's your own fault. So her point is this. When Bitcoin breaks the all-time high of 70,000, and we're all pretty much expecting that sometime this year. I think pretty much anyone would be surprised if we're not above 70,000 at some point this year. And if we are, her point is bull cycles have lasted 10 to 12 months, and you want to be in before that happens and get out appropriately. We can focus on the getting out appropriately later. We have plenty of time to worry about that. But I want to talk about us being in right now. You need to be in some coin right now. If you're not in Aptos, okay, which you might be since you're watching this video. But if you're not in Aptos, consider getting into Aptos. If you're not into something, get into something. Now, she did also make another point, and this is another one of her tweets. Bitcoin won't make you rich. It will at most do 3 times from here, and even that's unlikely. Focus on alts, and that's what Aptos is. It's an altcoin. And so, her point is, if you're trying to get rich, and I don't like that idea of rich. Look, rich means something different for everybody, and we all have different bank accounts and that we have access to, right? So rich for you is different from rich for me. Rich for me is way different than rich for Jeff Bezos, right? So that's just different. So I don't really like the word rich in the terms of you've got to decide what that means for you. But her point is Bitcoin's only going to go up 2 to 3 times. You're going to make your money in these altcoins. APT, if you're in it, I think you're doing fine. And we might get a little, again, according to Bitcoin, a little dive here, but long-term, goodness, I think you're just fine on APT. And I'll keep an eye on it with you. And hopefully, according to the reaction of this video, might make some new videos on APT coming up here in the future. All right, y'all take care. Be careful out there.